right, so I think we're going to start, make use of everyone's time. So welcome to today's webinar, Building a Better Integration Between HR and Payroll. Very happy to have you here, join us today. My name is Marc-Oliver Fiedler. I'm the CEO of Payzaar, and I'm joined today in this session by Trevor Townsend, who is the CEO of Payzaar, as well as Miranda Humphries, who's Director of Global Payroll at Grant Thornton Ireland. So I think we have a great session lined up for you today. We'll be talking about a topic that comes up in our conversations with clients around the world all the time. And that is really one of the key industry challenges that we're experiencing in the payroll industry. And that is how to build better integrations between your HR data environment and your payroll data environment. Now, before we're going to jump into today's session, just a few quick housekeeping items. All of the lines have been put on mute. If you would like to ask a question, you can do so by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask a question. We will collect all those questions throughout the webinar, and then we have set aside some time at the end of the session to circle back to those questions and answer them as they come in. This session is being recorded, so the recording will be made available over the next few days. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. Oh, see, I always do that. What we have in store today. There we go. Okay. I keep pushing my mute button. I have a talent for doing that on pretty much every webinar. But let's talk about the agenda. So I'm going to set a little bit the context, just what we're talking about today, and give you some background about the folks that are going to be talking to you today. Then I'm going to pass it over to Trevor and Miranda to talk more in depth about the challenges that we're seeing and we see our clients experiencing in HR and payroll and integrating those two functions. Then we want to give you an overview of our latest product feature that we're just rolling out, which is called Payzaar HR Connect. We'll give you a demo of that feature, a quick high-level overview of all the different features and aspects of how it works. And then, as I said, at the end, we have some time to get into some question and answers. So just to frame the discussion a little bit for today's session, we've been talking over the last few years to a lot of clients around the world. And what we hear again and again is that the data preparation part of the payroll process, or some people refer to it as the pre-payroll process, is one of the most challenging parts of running payroll. In fact, when we talk to payroll professionals, we hear numbers anywhere from 60, 70, 80% of their time being spent just on getting the data ready to be submitted to the local payroll partner. And that has to do with the fact that there's a lot of different source systems from which the data typically originates. And then, especially if you operate in a global environment, there's a lot of different destinations where you need to get that data into. And that can be very, very challenging because those systems typically are rather disjoint, siloed, and there's not a lot of direct communication back and forth. So that translates into lots of manual data wrangling, cutting and slicing your data in order to get it ready and aligned with what the local data requirements are that the local payroll system or local payroll provider expects to receive. And ultimately that generates obviously waste of time. It creates the risk of errors being introduced through the manual intervention, and also potentially opens up the risk for fraudulent activity in that process. Now, the good news is with today's technology, there are ways to overcome those challenges and create more efficient, smarter processes that allow us to generate payroll outputs in a more accurate and reliable manner. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. So But before we do, let me give you a little bit of background about Payzaar, in case you haven't come across us yet. We're a global payroll management platform provider. And ultimately what we do, we work with lots of multinational clients to help them integrate their different local payrolls in one central platform in order to help those clients to increase their oversight over the different payroll activities that are taking place in local payrolls, to bring automation into their processes, to drive better governance and compliance across payroll operations, and bring all the data and documents together in one central place so you can run reports and have better insights into your business. What's unique about how we build our global payroll solutions, different from the rest of the industry, is that we're building this in an open framework, which means you can essentially connect up any local payroll system, whether it's your existing local payroll providers or if you want to change out specific local payroll partners. Our platform is designed in a way to interoperate with those local payroll systems in a flexible manner, and bring everything together in one place. So doesn't require you to make big changes in local payroll environment in order to get the benefits of a global aggregated solution. We've been doing this now for the last 5 years. We started the company the kind of founding team coming out of ADP. And by now we're providing our solution to over 400 clients worldwide across 90 different countries with a total of 50,000 employees. And we're very, very happy and excited that we've been recognized by a variety of different industry analysts for the innovation that we're trying to bring to the global payroll industry. So with that as a backdrop, let me at this point turn it over to Trevor and Miranda to give us a little bit of background about themselves and then talk more in detail about the challenges and the experience that we're seeing with clients in terms of the global payroll integration with HR.
Super. Thanks a million, Mark. Hope everyone can hear me. I'm delighted to be on this webinar today and delighted to be joined by Miranda Humphries from Grant Thornton. Maybe just a couple of words about myself. Founded the business with Mark in 2016. I've a long career building HR and payroll platforms and services, and really excited about the work we're doing here at Payzaar, and delighted to be talking to Miranda here today. So Miranda, we're going to find out a little bit about you over the next few minutes.
Yeah.
So will we get into it, Miranda? Do you want to say just a couple of words about yourself first, and then we'll get into our session?
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, so I am with Grant Thornton. I'm our director of global payroll services. We've been building that service line for about the last 6 years. It's to the point that I transferred over from being a global payroll manager in industry, which is what I've been doing for probably about 10 years before that. Came over onto the professional services side and been building our side of the service along with our kind of technology partners with Payzaar to drive that.
Super. So listen, thanks to me, Miranda. So let's get straight into it, Miranda. How did you find yourself in payroll?
Well, yeah, I think actually finding yourself in payroll is what happens. I don't think anybody necessarily plans to go into payroll as a career before they've come across it. I think you stumble across it and fall in love with it, which is definitely my own experience. I actually started out in human resources. So, you know, this webinar would be very much close to my heart in terms of that kind of marrying up of the two departments. So I was a HR assistant in a firm in London, and I think they twigged I was a bit mathsy and I liked spreadsheets. It was the kind of small company where people wear a lot of hats, so they said, you know, do you want to try the payroll? I took on the UK payroll and did the IPP as it was at the time. Now the CIPP courses, and just loved it because it was actually a global group. I had the opportunity to work on some of their global payrolls, the Manila payroll. They had a Pakistan payroll. I ran the Belgian payroll, and I think for me it was just very quickly, this is where I belong. You know, this kind of work, it just appealed to me so much. All of the learning, the breadth of it, that was kind of it for me. I was very ambitious as soon as I kind of got into that, to do as much in the global payroll space as I could, really.
Yeah, no, it's, your passion for payroll is clear, and your breadth of experience is extensive. What do you most like about your role, Miranda?
I think my role now, as it is kind of just having so much experience with different clients. I think when I was working in industry, it was fantastic to get that growth in the global payroll space, to be working really in the detail of those payrolls. Obviously, I love the technical work of it. If you don't get excited when everything comes to zero at the end of a reconciliation, like that's what payroll is. We all know that. But where we are now, building. I suppose what I always wanted to do when I joined Grant Thornton and started building this business is to build the kind of payroll provider that I wanted to work with when I was sitting in that seat. And I would be very proud to say I really feel that we have that service level, we have the technology to drive it, and we're now in this position where we can really take on the global payroll piece with confidence and really help clients to solve problems. And I think that's the piece of payroll that you have to love. You have to love solving problems to love payroll. And that's kind of what we do every day. So that's what I love, I suppose.
Right. So when you say solving problems, what are some of the bigger challenges you see? Maybe if you look back to your early career when you were starting off in London and where you are now, what are some of the greatest challenges you see in the payroll arena or the global payroll arena?
Yeah, I think when you're working global payroll, I mean, compliance is always going to be your focus. You're never going to move far away from that. But really, I suppose your real headaches, your real kind of time sinks is going to be your process. Like as Mark said, 60 to 70% of your time is just cutting data, checking reports, bringing data in from lots of different places. And then actually on the other side, so that's kind of your HR relationship and your consistency and your accuracy. But then on the other side, also having that data go to your finance team and having proper linkages, enough information and understanding. And I think when you're payroll, you're always kind of sitting maybe with one of those functions, but either way, you're going to be between to some extent. Yeah. And not having a robust enough process, a clear enough understanding between either of those departments, I think is where you're going to get your pain points that won't, certainly won't go away. And the integration piece is obviously a huge part of that. If you can work towards, because I mean, human resources, especially when you're into like high volume, there is so many steps that go into every employee interaction before it gets to the payroll. And if you don't have a very robust understanding and a very robust system to pull all that through, you're always going to be dealing with multiple queries, multiple conversations, losing time over and over again,
And what's it like, Miranda, working without some technology in that space? Because what you're kind of describing to me is your career where you have like a passion for payroll, you like helping people. Effectively, the human being is the bridge between HR and finance. But let's say, how do you see that kind of, how do you see that kind of world now? Given that you have some technology, what does that world look like if you don't have that technology?
I can tell you exactly what it looks like because I lived that in so many of my roles. And that's the thing, so in my first role, we didn't actually have a HCM because it was not big enough. We had about 5 global locations, so a lot of information to keep track of, a lot of people, enough complexity, but not enough, let's say, for that kind of technology. So it means you have to have a lot of clever spreadsheets. But the great thing, I suppose the bad thing about clever spreadsheets is when the person managing that spreadsheet is off for a week, the person coming in, unless it's a very, very, very clever spreadsheet, they're always going to have trouble with that. And on a larger scale, I've worked in organizations where let's say they have the good HCM, but then they have, multiple different providers with multiple different processes and all of those manual bridges in between them. And again, they might be very good manual bridges. You might have an excellent way of manipulating that data every month that you've honed down. But again, passing that process over to a new person, giving that to someone to take on while you're off for a week or something, it's doable. And lots of people are doing it. Loads of people are either in small companies or, you know, just starting out in a role and building. They are doing that work. It is doable, but you are losing so much time, and you are not creating a robust, you know, safe, process for the business ongoing.
Yeah, and I suppose then the complexity when you think about kind of the global dimension, which you just touched upon there. So it's not just, you know, that manual process held together by, you know, the goodwill of the payroll team in one country. It's, you know, as we see kind of the global payroll role emerge, someone now has central responsibility for that across a large number of jurisdictions. So if we think about that complexity ramping up, obviously those headaches amplify.
Absolutely. And your ability to pull together that larger piece has to increase with that. And you know, as you move out of, let's say, your domestic payroll or your, you know, maybe 3 or 4 international payrolls into that larger space, you know, you stop focusing. And certainly my early career, I would have focused on, you know, I really wanted to be an absolute technical expert. I wanted to know everything about UK payroll, Belgian payroll, Irish payroll. That's where I saw, you know, that value. But actually, once you get into the real global space, you have to let go of that and focus on, you know, the knowledge that all of that expertise cannot sit with 1 or even 2 people. You have to be building, you know, robust documentation, a strong team, and you have to rely on systems. If you're not building it around a robust system, it's going to fall over at some point. It might not fall over while you're there, you know, if you make yourself that person, but that's no good for the business. You know, it's got to be bigger than that.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it there, which is the kind of the, you know, emergence of the global payroll role within businesses over the last 10 years. So, and you touched on a couple of the differences. What would you say are kind of the kind of key differences now running in that kind of oversight role, where you might be in a global shared service center or a regional shared service center, and you're responsible for 10, 15, 20 payrolls in different countries around the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely stepping back, you know, stepping back and building, I suppose building the team, building your process, bringing in your partners. Again, it's kind of moving away from just being the central, and you can get so used to that. I think so many international companies are actually not that big, so you might even have 1 or just 2 people running all these global payrolls, and it's a space where you have to get away from the detail, to step back, to deliver something that's really going to work. And as these companies grow, you know, and this is what we would see with our clients, which is wonderful. That's, and we're going to talk in a minute about kind of how we've worked with one of these clients together, which we do frequently. But it's wonderful when we take on a client when they're small, help them build up their operations, work together on process, and see us able to, you know, enable their growth within that model.
Sure. Well, listen, look, we have been working together on one of your clients on their journey to, you know, drive more automation and to drive more integration into their HR to payroll to finance landscape. So maybe just paint a little picture about that client for us, where they started, where they are now, and the kind of journey you've been on with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, as I said, we work on a number of clients like this, and it's a great opportunity to talk about it and to just kind of showcase that, I suppose. So this opportunity particularly came from one of our now larger clients. We've been working with them for about 3 or 4 years. When they came to us originally as their global payroll provider, they had 7 countries with payrolls, probably a little shy of 100 headcount. And over the intervening years, they've grown now in their international footprint hugely. At the beginning of next year, they're going to be in 23 countries and just over 1,000 headcount. And I think that's potentially going to double in their projections in 2022. And as I said, what's really gratifying for us is they have grown and developed that within our global model. They've brought their new payrolls, their new locations and headcounts to us. So it's been a very, very close partnership. And obviously, as you would expect, like their needs, the complexity of the business has grown over that time. And what's been great for us is to be able to partner with them, to work with them, to meet those needs with our own developing technology. And obviously Payzaar is at the heart of that for us. So when we brought them on board with the platform, we were able to bring the global reporting functionality, which is obviously hugely beneficial just in itself. Enhanced that more recently with the journal functionality, again, helping them to have smooth processes within their whole business, not just their payroll team, but helping that whole wider process. And then most recently, obviously, with that growth, inevitably becomes the need for integration. They actually use Workday as their in-house system. And we've discussed, with them, they really see it as key to managing their ongoing growth and the delivery of their global payrolls, that they are able to integrate that with our system. Yeah. So obviously we would know, and we would talk about the fact that that's always been on the roadmap for development with Payzaar. And so it came about, between ourselves, that along with our client, we have helped to collaborate in the building of the module, which has been a really exciting project for us to be a part of. Collaborating on the functionality, helping with the UAT testing, making sure that our input, ideas, needs, are going into that. Yeah. And what I think has been really key to that success is actually bringing that client in for their input. We have our technical expertise, we have, our knowledge of the client needs, but actually for them, and especially as the client they're very progressive in the way that they work, very, very, very demanding in that they know their needs and they know how they want to work. And I think that input's been really key, and it's made it a really exciting project. And we're delighted we're rolling the software out with them this month, really, because it's all on the roadmap for them, and it's meeting their growth at a time when it's going to make a huge difference to their business. Yeah.
I know it super, and from our perspective, we love customer-driven development at Payzaar, because while we know a little bit about the industry, we don't have all of the good ideas and all of the insights, and it's great being able to work with Grant Thornton and your customers to develop leading functionality. I suppose a piece, Miranda, we might close in a couple of moments and move on. But when we think about what we've developed for your client, how applicable do you think that is for other businesses? Just if you think about maybe some high growth businesses that are expanding internationally quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that the functionality, and very much to both of our agendas has been designed is so that it's not specific to one HCM, or let's say even if you don't have one. And I think this is the key thing. As I said, there are people who are somewhat held together with chewing gum and string, but they have the spreadsheets, they have the data. They don't want to keep manipulating it for the Hong Kong provider, the Sweden provider, and so on. And the way that this functionality will take your data in a format that you then map into the system, you can keep your consistent format, whether that's your own reports that you just keep your track of your employees, your sophisticated HCM, your pension reports, your benefit providers. I think that's, to me, the key piece. And I suppose it comes back to where I started, which is that I always wanted to, create the provider that I wanted to work with. And this would be key for me, is to say, okay, it's nice that it works with Workday, but what if we decide to stop using Workday? And that's the piece that I think is, makes it applicable for any size, for any kind of, growth agenda.
So maybe just one last question then, Miranda, just given your experience in the global payroll community, what do you think is in store for our colleagues and our peers over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think the use of automation and robotics is certainly something we're seeing more and more of, and probably more quickly than we would have imagined in the payroll space. We're using it ourselves for a few clients where they have specific reporting needs that kind of sit, let's say, across a few different functions, and they want to bring it together, robotics solutions, more automation. I mean, anywhere that data can be, fed and parsed by robotics is going to enhance all of your processes. And I think there's a huge drive for it now. I mean, I think, we talked about that growth in the global model. I think there is more and more recognition of the importance of payroll, the value that it can have to a business outside of just a transactional, push a button and pay people. So I think there's more and more interest in building those kind of tools, the automation, the efficiency.
Absolutely. I think it amazes me that there isn't more made of kind of the cleanliness and the accuracy of the data in payroll, especially when you think that, you know, payroll and labor-related costs probably are between 65 and 70% of your overall cost base in the business, and it's probably it's probably the cleanest data, because every single employee has a vested interest in making sure that those numbers are accurate, right? Yeah. So I think there's an awful lot of power at the, if you can gather it all together, I think there's an awful lot of power at the disposal of the payroll team to be able to enable decision making around the business.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, the tools that you use to do that, I think are key.
Yeah, good. Well, Miranda, listen, super chatting to you about your experience and the journey that we've been on together over the last number of years. More recently with that business where we're integrating their HR and other data on the data preparation side, the payroll input side, to move towards move out towards processing payroll, and then onwards into finance system through the general ledger journal entry integration. What I might do is we'll hand back to Mark and move the West webinar forward. Thanks again for your time, Miranda, and appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Trevor, and thanks, Miranda, to both of you for sharing your insights and experience. That's very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of what you just talked about undoubtedly resonates with the folks here on the webinar. Yeah, look, just to kind of talk a bit about, I think, some of the concepts that both Miranda and Trevor in the conversation touched upon. This slide that you're seeing here is meant to summarize a bit the situation that we're finding in lots of clients, like the client example that Miranda talked about, where you have as the source of data lots of different systems, HR system, and it's not just the core HR system, but typically you have data that sits distributed across benefits, time and attendance, commission, expenses systems, right? So it's not just about getting the data out of your Workday or SAP SuccessFactors solution, but you need to collect data from other data sources as well. In fact, can be as basic as a local spreadsheet that someone maintains that maybe contains the commissions or the bonuses for the business. And then you need to obviously transform that data and structure it in a way that it can be consumed by local payroll systems. And again, when you're operating in a multi-country environment, that means you need to be able to adapt to lots of different local payroll systems and their respective data requirements, how they want to receive the data in the local context. And that typically, when you don't have the technology, means there's a lot of manual cutting and slicing going on, reformatting of your data re-entry from one system into another, which we know is time consuming, but also tends to introduce errors. And this picture is actually probably a lot cleaner than in reality. This almost looks nice, but in reality, the spaghetti that's going on is probably even a lot messier than this. So with that in mind, that's why we set out and said, how can we as a technology company at Payzaar, how can we help to address these challenges? And that's what led to the solution that we're rolling out, which we're calling HR Connect. As you heard Miranda and Trevor talk about, we basically been working on the solution over the last year together with Grant Thornton and a leading fintech technology company that Miranda described. And really what HR Connect allows you to do is it allows you to pull the data out of the various different source systems, import that into Payzaar platform, and then within that platform, we have built tools, capabilities to automatically map, translate, and parse out the data so that it aligns with the data needs that each of the local payroll partners that you're working with or local payroll systems has, that it can be aligned with that. It's designed to be highly configurable, so it works with essentially any source system, not just Workday or SAP, but it can bring in data from lots of different data sources. Again, could be as basic as a spreadsheet. You can even, and that's also the reality that we're experiencing every day in the payroll world, some of the data won't be captured in any system. So you can also directly enter that data into the Payzaar interface and make that sort of your system of record where you maintain that data, and then send it out and push it out to the local payroll systems in this automated manner, which obviously then reduces your manual work, gives you a full digital record and auditability of how the data ended up where it ends up. So that's the concept, and that's what we've been working on. To talk a bit about the difference in our solution, how we've approached that industry challenge compared to some of the other solution models that you might have come across or that you might be looking at out in the industry. Fundamentally, the way we see it, there's three different options how you can build an integration between your HR environment and your payroll environment. Number one, you can build point-to-point integrations. There's lots of companies that go down that path. That comes with certain challenges. Typically, that's fairly bespoke and hence requires a significant amount of custom development, custom integration, and therefore typically is not that scalable. Especially, it might be viable to use that sort of direct integration model, point-to-point integration, for larger countries where that effort pays off. But typically, the business case for smaller countries, quickly doesn't pay off. Plus, obviously, if you change the solution on one end of that point-to-point integration, whether it's on the payroll side or on the HR side, you're going to have to rebuild the integration from scratch. Second model would be to leverage a payroll aggregator that may have an integration to some of the common HR platforms, and some clients go down that path. What comes with that model is that you will have to basically align all your local payroll solutions with the aggregators model, right? So typically the aggregators work with specific in-house solutions that they've built their solution around. So essentially that will mean that you will need to transform and you need to replace your existing local payroll solutions to align with the solutions that the aggregator supports. So that can introduce a fair amount of change at the local payroll level. And then the third model is the one that we're introducing, that we're promoting with our HR Connect platform. That's essentially agnostic in terms of the HR system and agnostic in terms of the local payroll systems, designed to be configurable to support ultimately any local payroll backend and any HR platform to bring those two together. But rather than talk about it sort of in abstract terms, we thought that it might be nice to give you a little view of what it actually looks like and how it works. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Trevor to walk us through a little high-level demo of the actual solution that we built. Trevor, over to you.
Cheers, Mark. Just getting set up here. So Payzaar helps you to standardize your payroll processes, so data preparation, payroll approval, get your outputs together, view pay slips, manage your approval processes and ultimately statutory filings. What we want to concentrate on is how do you gather your data via HR Connect, and we've embedded that functionality into the Payzaar process, and we've developed these grids which basically allow you to import data from your various different source systems like HR systems, variable payments, your commission files, for instance, from sales operations, overtime from time and attendance system, and be able to trim that data to support the needs of your provider. So if we dig into one of these grids, we've taken in some data from your HR system. What we can do is we can copy previous periods. And this is great for, small pay groups where you want to potentially manually update standing data about employees in the system. You can add rows of data if you wish. You can edit information as it changes. Like in this case, for instance, we're changing Martin's department to R&D. There could be a bank account change for that information. And this is all laid out in output, exportable output format that your provider can use. So the great thing about it is, depending on what you want to change or how you want to maintain your data, if you want to take it in automatically from your HR systems or manually review it, you can. We're going to clear the grid now and just see what it looks like if, for example, you'd pulled a file from your HRIS, so for example, Workday. So you can just drag and drop the extract onto these grids. And in this particular case, we have change detection enabled on this particular grid, which highlights changes that you're importing from your HR system like Workday and comparing it to the last period. So you can see those changes highlighted in yellow. The view changes option lets us manage that. So in this case, we're ready to send this data. We've reviewed it. We're sending it off to our payroll provider for this particular country. So that particular grid is gone. The variable payment grid is interesting because what this one does is it again lays out what you need to send your provider and combines variable payments of different types. So in this case, what we have are bonus information, some equity information, maybe that's coming in from a system like E-Trade, and some dental costs or medical costs coming from a local benefit system or a local benefit carrier. So if I just drag and drop some bonus information onto the file, it loads the bonus amounts for those employees. So we can see that it hasn't loaded any equity or dental costs just yet. Let's see if we can combine some more information. Let's drag on our file from E-Trade. So you can see now that we're manually, we're building up and combining the data on our grids for these different pay types, and again formatting this information to suit the output that your provider wants. Last file on here is to throw on our dental costs. So we can see some of our employees on here. For instance, in this case, Faith has bonus and equity information and some dental information. Some other employees just have a single information. Carl is the same as Faith. Again, so bonuses, some equity payouts, and some dental variable pay items have gone onto the grid. The great thing about it is it just makes it easy that we're able to map that information from your local input systems and transform it into the file types your customer wants. Here's another example now, our commission file. If you take a look at the underlying data, we have a couple of errors in this file. We're missing an employee number. We're missing some mandatory data around department. And also then we have some country information here. So we're able to exclude data from certain countries from this report. So again, if you're running reports from a single system across multiple jurisdictions or entities, our HR Connect capability is able to filter that out for you. So when we load this data on, again, we can see that we're highlighting some errors here in pink. The department is a mandatory item. When we correct that now, it will that error now goes away, which is great. And you can also see in the entity column here, we've excluded some of that US data. So again, just in terms of your efficiency, you have one run report across all of your pay elements across all of your entities, drop it onto the grids and filter out what we need. The overtime file is interesting. It shows how we can transform some data. So on our grid here, again, this is the output that the provider wants. We can see that we have laid out some columns on here. One of them is our overtime calculation column. Basically, the provider wants overtime hours multiplied by our overtime rates. They need this output from you. So when we take a look at the underlying data for overtime now in a moment, what we'll see is we'll see the local data, but we won't have an overtime calculation column in here. And again, you can see how we've run this across multiple countries, and we're only interested in pulling the UK data from this list. We're not interested in pulling the US data from this list. So behind the scenes, we have the data transformation working. So let's drag and drop the file onto the grid, and we can see that the overtime calculation column is now populated. We can see we've applied that calculation in the case of Connor Watson. 5 times 15 gets me to $75 worth of overtime payment for this period. So HR Connect has done its job. It's transformed the data and it's generated that data and pushed it off to the provider. And you notice on here we've recall buttons, provided that the data hasn't or the data preparation stage hasn't gone past its end date. You can recall the data, top it up if there's some late changes, and your provider will get an automatic notification when you submit it again. All of the grids can be pushed through an internal approval process, and we just write a little notification off to our provider to say, hey, job done, let's process the period. So we've integrated this data preparation and HR Connect capability within our workflow process. You can see that we're building up an activity log of all of the actions and all of the inputs and all of the changes that we made, and all of the information that we got from our different source systems, so that we need to go back into the future to take a look at that information and find out what were the underlying kind of payroll instructions you can. Another nice feature of this is that at any point in the future, you can go back and take a look specifically at what was submitted on the grids, what changes were available, and both you and the provider can view that. So I'm just using the view changes functionality here to highlight the changes in this particular period to this particular set of data from the HRIS. We've export capability here, lots of options on how you want to export your data. You could export the whole grid and all of the data, or you could focus on changes only. What's nice about it as well is you can export data using headers specifically required by your local payroll provider. Again, it just takes out all of that knifing and forking that is done between you, the customer of payroll outsourcing services, and your local providers to get the data into their local systems. Of course, that reduces errors and reduces the time taken to produce payroll. So that's that. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Trevor. Thanks a lot for the overview. That was very, very powerful in terms of seeing the different functionality that we have in the platform. I know that was a lot of we covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time, but hopefully it gives you a sense for what the platform can do. Fundamentally, as we discussed, the idea really is to give you the power of technology in order to automate things that your team today would be doing in a lot of cases very manually, give you time savings, reduce errors, give you better control and better auditability of your your payroll data. So that's what we wanted to share with you today. We're talking a bit about the fundamental industry challenges to giving you an idea of how those can be addressed with solutions like Payzaar HR Connect. So at this point, I see there's already some questions that are coming in through the Q&A function. So what I would like to do is open it up to go into the questions that people have been asking. And if you have questions in addition to what's already being asked, feel free to enter those into the chat or into the Q&A box here as well. Let me go in there and pull up the first few questions that have come in, and then we'll see how we can answer them. So the first one is asking about, in order to benefit from the Payzaar approach, do I need to change my existing local payroll providers for payroll processing? Today, I also have some EOR and PO partners doing the processing in some remote countries for smaller populations. Can they also work with the Payzaar platform? So I can start answering that. Trevor, feel free to chime in as well. So the answer is, with our open platform approach, the benefit is exactly that you can keep your existing local payroll providers as long as you're happy with their local knowledge and expertise and the service that they're providing to you. We can incorporate them into our platform. We can connect them up to the Payzaar platform so that they can receive the data that you're transporting through Payzaar directly out of the Payzaar platform. And that works not only with traditional local payroll providers, but we also work with PEO or EOR providers that use our platform to both manage the day-to-day operational tasks and workflows, as well as integrate data into their backends from Payzaar. So, Trevor, is there anything you would want to add, or should we jump to the next question?
Maybe jump to the next one. I think you've done that one pretty nicely, Mark. So I think this next question in here is it possible to remove part of the import if you found some errors in the underlying data that came in from your other systems? I think is that yeah, you can remove the data loaded on the grid. You can completely clear the grid, or you could choose to clear columns on the grid and just import data over the top to add your corrections, or simply you know, get the data from your source system again and drop that updated file over the top of what you've loaded, and it will update the data that's already that you've already input. So you won't lose any of your correct data, but it will update any data that's since been changed in your source system. So so yeah, so I think that's that second question from Christine answered there. Sorry, I've just got a message to turn on my video. Sorry about that, folks.
People want to see you currently. That's fine. All right. Should we get into the next one? So one of the questions I'm seeing here is, can you please articulate a bit more the tech and architectural difference between Payzaar solution and, for example, Cloud Pay and the payroll module of Dayforce? Looking at what I just saw, they appear very similar conceptually.
Yeah. So maybe
Trevor, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I suppose it kind of comes back to one of the earlier slides that Mark showed. We've designed Payzaar to be open. It's open in terms of where you get your source payroll data from, you know, so your change information, your payroll instructions. It's open then as well in terms of where do we push that data. So, you know, so that could be, you know, you might have independent in-country providers in different countries around the world, and you know they're back-ended by different payroll systems. So we've designed Payzaar to be open, B, configurable, so that it just makes the process of customers gathering their payroll change information together, transforming that into the needs of the local payroll provider and getting it to the provider in the format that they need. Some of the benefits of that then, well, from a customer perspective, you don't have to change out your existing payroll providers if you don't want to. By being open and also interoperating with local payroll systems of your local payroll providers, it just means we're not trying to force a square peg into a round hole with those local payroll providers. And just again, a lot of the, our understanding of a lot of the payroll providers that operate in the traditional aggregator type model is that they take data from the central aggregator and then they have to manually cut and slice and dice that data to get it into their systems. So what we do is we try to design with both the customer's needs in mind and also the payroll, the in-country payroll providers' system needs in mind. So hopefully that answers that question in terms of our approach to integration and to collaboration with the different stakeholders in the payroll process.
Perfect. Thanks for that answer, Trevor. Let's go to the next question. What is the approach towards customers with very defragmented and not very harmonized processes for payroll and time and attendance, with multiple countries and multiple entities in the same country? So I suppose if I understand the question, so if you have lots of different local payroll systems and different payroll vendors that you're working with, either within the same country, across different entities, or across the different countries that you're in, again, what Payzaar can help you to do, a fundamental concept of our solution is to actually help you streamline, standardize, and harmonize your workflows, your payroll operation to start with, because only if you have standards established that we will be able to put in place through the workflows that we've designed into the Payzaar platform, then we can start to bring some of the automation tools and the integration tools that we just talked about into your environment as well. But the good news is, even if you're very decentralized and you work with lots of different local payroll partners, our model can help you to bring all this, consistent structuring of your workflows and your data into your payroll environment, while you're still benefiting from the local experts on the ground that you're currently working with. And that applies to, a single country, again, if you're working across multiple entities within the same country, or across various different countries. So absolutely, applicable and supportable with the model that we're building out at Payzaar. I think another question that's interesting here is you referenced Workday and a few other HR solutions on your slides. What if my HR system isn't on the list? Trevor,
yeah,
what if the HR solution is not on the list? What do we do?
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. We design our HR data grids with the output from that system in mind, and we work with you to do that. Now, when we say we design it, what we have in the background is a set of configuration tools that allows very, very quickly to set those up. And once they're set up, you just drag and drop, or you import your information onto those grids, and away you go. But it applies not just to HRIS, because if I think about the payroll landscape, a lot of people say, well, look, we've standardized on this HR system, Workday, SuccessFactors, UltiPro, whatever it is, Bamboo, and all our data is in there. And then you have a conversation, you say, well, look, where is your, do you have any equity in your business? And next thing you know, we find out that equity is stored in E-Trade. How do you calculate sales commissions? Well, they're done based on some work that we've done with Salesforce.com, and that's where you get that information. We've local health benefits that come from a local health benefit carrier from their portal. And essentially what we've had to do is to be able to design it, not just with thinking about, you know, beyond just certain HR systems. You have to think about the whole gamut of payroll change data, the things that actually, you know, you need to move through your process to make sure people are paid 100% right all of the time. And that means we've a very configurable approach to be able to consume data from various source systems, not just, you know, the HR information systems like Workday that we've mentioned in this presentation so far.
Excellent. Good. No, we have a few more questions. So one of the questions here is, I see you're in 90 countries. What if my country isn't currently served? So yeah, look, I think at the moment, as we said on one of our slides, we have customers live and using our platform in over 90 countries. And that list actually expands almost every week as we onboard new clients. And for us, that's because we built a platform in the way we have, i.e. open and configurable. It's actually very, very quick and easy for us to set up a system for new countries, for new local partners that we're onboarding into Payzaar. And in fact, I would say, while we currently have customers using the platform in 90 countries, we definitely have relationships and partnerships with providers in a lot more countries than just those 90 countries. I think at the last count, it's probably over 150 countries that we can cover with our platform, where we have existing local partner relationships and can get customers up and running very quickly. But again, it means if you already have, if you're operating in a country that we currently don't have a live customer in, you have a local payroll partner that you're already working with, we can onboard that existing local payroll partner, or we can recommend or bring someone to the table from our network of partners as well. All right, so looking at the time, I think we have probably time for one last question. And that one I will go to Kenzo is asking, is Payzaar a payroll processing solution as well? Or is it a tool, just a tool to improve the payroll management by automating the HR and payroll connection? So if I understand that question, we are a global payroll management platform that allows you to basically manage your end-to-end workflows from the data preparation, data collection, all the way through the calculation to the approvals, through generating your pay slips, distributing your pay slips, approving payments, and then finally processing and submitting your statutory filings. So we do cover the end-to-end process. It's more than just the automation between the HR and payroll that we focused on today. What we not is we're not a payroll service bureau or service processor. So, and that's by design. Unlike some of the other global vendors that do have their own local payroll service teams on the ground, when we set up Payzaar, we very consciously decided that we want to be agnostic. We don't want to push our own local service capabilities. We want to be agnostic and be able to support customers with lots of different local service models and service providers. That's fundamentally how we're operating. So, you know, we're agnostic in that sense. We work with lots of different partners like Grant Thornton and many others that can support the specific needs of customers from a service and payroll processing, local payroll processing perspective, and use our solution then to basically bring it all together in one place. That's a fundamental difference in the concept behind Payzaar. So at this point, I would say probably a good time for us to wrap it up. If you do have additional questions that we didn't get to answer in this session, feel free to reach out to us. I'll actually bring up the last slide here that has some of our contact information on it. We will, by the way, send out the slides. You'll receive a copy of these slides that we walked through today, as well as I mentioned at the beginning, a link to the recording once that's processed and put online. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Trevor, for jumping on this session. Very interesting discussion. Thank you for all the questions, and we look forward to talking to you all again in the near future.
Super.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.